Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupini avataravarishthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. There was a request, came through some emails for giving a revision of what we discussed so far on the philosophy of Dvaita or Madhva philosophy. So I gave a background earlier. There are, if you can keep this in mind, is a very, just a panorama of India's philosophical tradition, which is very complex and very wide, and it's actually a matter of lifetime to make a close study of even a few of those philosophical systems. So altogether there are 12 systems of philosophy which can claim to have originated from India, Indian subcontinent to be more precise. And 6 of them are called orthodox systems of philosophy, and 6 of them are called heterodox systems of philosophy. 6 orthodox systems called Astika Darsanas and 6 Nastika Darsanas called heterodox system. So the word Astika, Nastika in Sanskrit, in at least the assumed implication, is called conventional terminology. Astika means a system of philosophy which believes in God, in revelation. If you translate Astika into theistic, in the English word theistic, theism. And the heterodox system, Nastika, is a system of philosophy which doesn't believe in God. But then in Indian context, this is not true. In India's philosophical tradition, landscape, a system is called orthodox not because it believes in a created God or a monotheistic God. Rather, it accepts Vedas as an important testimony. In fact, to be more precise, a system of philosophy which does not reject the authenticity of the Vedas. Such a system of philosophy is called Astika Darsanam or orthodox system of philosophy. So there are some systems of orthodox philosophy which fully uphold the teachings of the Vedas, and there are some systems which can be called orthodox only in the sense that it does not reject the authenticity of the Vedas. Many of the misunderstandings that prevail about India's philosophical system that you can find in many modern writers who don't have access to the traditional learning. One important misunderstanding is that system of philosophy which doesn't accept God is called heterodox, and the system of philosophy which accepts God is called orthodox. No. You can be a follower of an orthodox system of philosophy. For example, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, and Vaisheshika. 4 of the 6 systems, orthodox systems of philosophy, do not uphold Vedas as the supreme authority in the same way in which Vedantins and Mimamsakas uphold them. Because for 2 schools, Vedanta and the ritualistic school called Mimamsaka, these 2 schools consider Vedas as supreme, as a very important source of knowledge. More or less the same way in which, for example, a Christian considers New Testament or Old Testament in a very different way as an important source of knowledge, as important, as a great testimony, as an authentic source of the spiritual tradition. Jewish tradition considers Torah and Talmud as the supreme authority in the religious matters, philosophical questions, and Christians consider New Testament, or like Buddhists consider the Tripitakas, like that. So there are only two schools among the Orthodox tradition which actually uphold Vedas as the supreme authority. The other four schools, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and Sankhya and Yoga, that is Indian schools of logic, atomism, yoga, and Indian schools of evolutionism, we call Sankhya system. They also consider Vedas as important, but they don't have the same reverence for Vedic authority as the Vedantins and Mimamsakas. So this is one important category. And Madhva Siddhanta that we are discussing right now, Dvaita system of philosophy, is one of the 7 schools of Vedanta. One of the 7 important schools of Vedanta, of which the most well-known school is the school of Shankaracharya called Advaita. Non-dualistic system that we already discussed in the earlier sessions. And also Ramanuja system called Visishtadvaita. Madhva system also comes under this category of the 7 schools of Vedanta. It can be called 8 because depending upon, there are some minor divisions among the traditional scholars as to 7 or 8. Most of the non-Advaitic schools have some connection with the Vaishnava literature, Vaishnava religious literature, except this Abhinavagupta system, where the Chaitanya, Nimbarka, Vallabha, Madhva, Ramanuja, all of them belong in some way or other, they all belong to the Vaishnava system of thoughts. Now we are actually trying to recapitulate what we already discussed till now, and then we will take up the epistemology and also the theory of error. There's a very important point to understand Madhva's concept of Panchabheda Siddhanta that we already discussed, the concept of 5 differences that we discussed in the earlier sessions. So now, historically speaking, I mentioned earlier that Madhva system emerged as a revolt, not just as a response, but a revolt against Shankaracharya's Advaita. Ramanuja's system can be called a response. Madhva system can be called a revolt because Ramanuja system contained within it some aspects of non-dualism, but Madhva system is almost the polar opposite of Advaita. That is just the opposite of Advaita. In that respect, it was a revolt and not just a response. He was born in the year 1238 and passed away in 1317. And after him, there were many other writers who, they all in one way or other, they were solipsists. They indulged in solipsism or dialectical, polemical disputations with the different aspects of Advaita, very often in a slightly militant, using some strong militant language. So that's an important aspect. I think the only system of Vedanta that took a very aggressive stand against its opponent is the Madhva system. That we'll discuss, we are coming to that now. So before Madhvacharya, there were already other philosophers who questioned Shankara's system. And one of them was Bhaskara, who believed in some kind of Bheda system, Samuchayavada. He was the first great thinker who not revolted, they responded in a negative way to the emergence of Advaita. And then came Ramanuja. Now, for both Ramanuja and Madhva, the supreme monotheistic God, the idea of the supreme God, is an aspect of Vishnu or Krishna. For example, Vishnu, Sriman Narayana, that's how, or an aspect of Krishna, it's a Vaishnava tradition. Now, I shall give one important incident, and this will give us an idea of how a philosophical challenge emerges, how a philosophical response emerges against a philosophical school within the same philosophical landscape. For example, I said earlier there were a number of dialectical works written after Shankaracharya's passing away, upholding and defending and reinforcing some of his important tenets. There were many books. One important book was Panchapadika, written by Padmapada, one of Shankaracharya's own disciples. And Bhamadi, again, it is a book written by Vajaspati. It's also a commentary on a large portion of Brahma Sutras, following Shankaracharya's footsteps. Sureshwaracharya also wrote Brihadaranya Upanishad Bhashya Vartikam, very elaborate, super commentary by Shankaracharya on Brihadaranya Upanishad. A number of such books were written, and one of them actually created a strong response in the mind of Madhva. That book was Ishtasiddhi, a book written by a well-known post-Shankarite scholar called Vimuktatman. That book was an important text in the early 13th century when Madhvacharya was studying Vedanta. It called Ishtasiddhi. And there, and remember, this Ishtasiddhi is a book on Advaita written perhaps almost 300 years after Shankaracharya's passing away. And in many ways, that book did not do full justice to Advaita, the real, genuine Advaita of Shankara. Just as Ramanuja's guru, who taught him Advaita, Yadava Prakasha, taught him a very distorted version of Advaita, not exactly what Shankaracharya wrote or preached. A different, more of a dry, world negating school of polemical school of Advaita. That is what Ramanuja was studying under his teacher Yadava Prakasha. That was about more than 100 years earlier. Similarly, Madhvacharya also had a misfortune to study this book Ishtasiddhi. And naturally, he was a man of what you call a devotional temperament, so he could not fully digest that version of Advaita. And as a result, he became an opponent, if we say in some ways, in a very hostile sense, a very strong opponent of Advaita. Now, how this happens, I can give many examples can be given. Of course, I can give some examples from Madhvacharya's book. He wrote a well-known book, Vishnu Tattva Nirnayaka. Is a well-known book Madhvacharya wrote. In that book, he tries to oppose and question the Advaitins' view of the world. For example, Shankaracharya says, this is part of his philosophy, he says, this world is mithya, and that is maya. And it is in a way neither real in the absolute sense nor unreal in the absolute sense. It's called sadasat vilakshana. That's true for avidya, maya, and also this world. Now, Madhvacharya says this is a logical contradiction. More or less in a less hostile way, Ramanuja also raised similar views in his own books. So, this particular view is called, in fact, this part of epistemology is called Khyadivada in Sanskrit. You may call it theory of error. I mentioned earlier, Vedantists do not accept the theory of evil because they don't project a devil as a counterpart, as an opponent of God, who is working somewhere trying to drag God's devotees away from the spiritual path. Indian schools of philosophy do not project anything that is comparable to Augustine's concept of radical sinfulness or the concept of the devil trying to drag human soul, this jivas, souls, away from the path of God. Instead, what they project is a kind of theory of error. It's called Khyadivada. Now, according to Dvaita, the Khyadivada is based on this simple principle. There is only one reality, that is Brahman, and that Brahman is beyond definition, beyond epistemology, sarva pramana avadhi, they call, there are many technical terms used. If you are interested, you can ask, I can explain, I can introduce. At the beginning itself it could be complicated. Sarva pramana avadhi means beyond all epistemological tools. Anivachaniya means beyond all definitions. I earlier mentioned that many of these terms were used, almost verbatim, by the great German Advaitin theologian, Meister Eckhart, in 13th century. So, according to Advaita, what appears to be real but not actually real is neither real nor unreal. What appears to be real but actually not real is neither real nor unreal. This may appear to be complicated. Why? Because to be called real, it should be the same in the past, present and future. It should be the same. And what is not the same, what is not unchanging in the past, present and future cannot be called absolutely real, but it's not absolutely unreal because we experience it. So, it can only be called Sadasat Vilakshana, means something that is neither real nor unreal. Now, Madhvacharya will have nothing to do with this. He says, what you call absolutely unreal, what do you call something which is not absolutely unreal, not absolutely real, it is actually either real or unreal. There is nothing in this world which is neither real nor unreal. Either it is real or it is unreal. So, for example, for Madhvacharya, this world is real. Everything in this world is real. All jivas are real. This world is real. You may ask the question, Advaitin's definition of reality as something that remains unchanging in the past, present and future, that definition is not acceptable to Madhva. Madhva doesn't accept that view. He says, what we experience now, but may not experience later, it is not unreal, and it cannot be called unreal because it is there. So even momentary experience itself has the same ontological status of reality as the eternal reality. In that sense, Ishvara is real, and also everything in this world also is real. So it's only one difference. Ishvara or God is Swatantra or independent, and everything in this world is dependent. Swami, that means Ishvara is only Swatantra, the master, I mean the independent, and everything else in this world is real but not independent, it is dependent. So that's a great difference from Shankaracharya's concept of Anirvachaniya Khyati, the theory of error based on that definition that what is not absolutely real, like this world, is not absolutely unreal either because we experience it, but at the same time it is changing, so it cannot be called absolutely real, because the absolute reality should remain the same, unchanging in the past, present and future. So, Pradibhasika, Vyavaharika and Paramarthika, there is Saptatrayam in Vedanta. Now, Ramanuja and Madhva both reject the distinction between Paramarthika and Vyavaharika. They say Vyavaharika is as real as Paramarthika. Vyavaharika means what is empirically true. It's part of our empirical worldly experience, what we witness and recognize and comprehend with our eyes, with our senses and mind, that is real. So, he totally rejects the idea of empirical reality as distinct from absolute reality. This is an important point. In other words, using a technical language, Advaitins accept the theory of error called Anirvachaniya Khyati, means something which is beyond definition. It is neither real nor unreal. That is, this world, Maya, the Jagat, all that we see. There are many interesting examples in Vedanta. For example, the silver and called Neka, called mother of pearl, something that appears to be silver. Then, if you walk in the seashore, you will find some small little shells which from a distance, because of the brilliant sunlight, it may appear to be silver, but when you see, you take it and observe it, actually it is not silver, it has the appearance of silver. So here, maybe from a Advaita point of view, you can say you superimpose silverness on the mother of pearl. So Madhvacharya will tell you, when you superimpose it, for that time being it is silver. And later when you mistake it, then it is gone. So in other words, superimposition is a concept that Madhvacharya did not accept. This is an important thing. So that's why, he has given the very term Dvaita. Madhvacharya says, for example, it is mentioned in some of the traditional works like Sarva Darshana Sangraha. It is called Purna Prajna Darshana. Purna Prajna was the name given to Madhvacharya. It is the philosophy of Madhvacharya. So, that is another important point. When you don't see any distinction between the absolute and the relative, then what happens is, everything in this world is real, but everything in this world is not independent, because what he calls Swamitvam, the ownership, total independence, that is only an attribute of Ishvara only. Nothing in this world, nothing else in this world is Swatantra. This is an important point. In other words, God is Savior and Swamin. He is to be served. God, you have to do service to God. He is the one whom you should serve. And he is the master. He is the independent master. And all jivas are just those who are doing service to him, sevakas. So, and I mentioned earlier, I remember how Advaitins sometimes ridicule how the Dvaitins ridicule the Advaitins concept of Aham Brahmasmi. I mentioned earlier how Madhvacharya and his followers sometimes look upon Advaitins concept of Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi actually is a very important principle. I explained this in my Dvaita lectures. You know, when you listen to a Mahavakya, Tattum Asi. I remember Madhvacharya, according to Madhva system, it is Atattum Asi. Nyayamrita is a well-known book in which Vyasatirtha says it is Atattum Asi. I mentioned this in my earlier session, so no need to repeat again. If you have any doubt, you can ask the question later. So, Tattvamasi is an instruction. You listen to the instruction. The God you are looking for, you are searching, is actually the divine reality present in yourself. This is the implication of Tattvamasi Mahavakya. After listening to this, a spiritual seeker, he will do a lot of contemplation, meditation, and so on. And finally, he will realize, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the absolute reality. Not the physical body, but the divine spark present in me and present everywhere is the same one supreme reality. Now, this great spiritual truth is looked upon in a totally different light by the followers of Dvaita. So this is well-known verse is the Ghadayantihi Rajano Raja Ahamidi Vatinaha Dadadi Akhilam Ishtamcha Sugunur Kashavatinam. Sumanta says, suppose a servant of a king claims, well, I am the king. If his servants claim kingship, the king's first instinct will be to get rid of those servants. Ghadayanti literally means it kills them. On the other hand, suppose some servants, they praise the king and they, in all humility, they say, well, we are not the kings, the king is different, he is somewhere else. If the king finds out the humility of the servants, then the Dadadi Akhilam Ishtam, then what happens, to those servants, the king give everything that they need, that they desire for. This idea behind. This is an important verse. Actually, this verse may appear to be very simple, but it contains a strong refutation of the implication of Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi implies that the supreme reality we are searching for is actually within ourselves as our essential inner being. What it means is not the physical body, not the mind, not the thought, not the emotions, not the feelings. Sometimes, there are interesting things, in some of the polemical works of Dvaitins, there are statements which are almost ridiculous. For example, everything in this world is bhinna vastunaha bhinna dharmaha, they say. Everything in this world is different from each other. And for example, two leaves of the tree, of the branch are not the same. Two human beings cannot be the same. The 5 fingers in our hands cannot be the same, cannot be identical. So, dualism, plurality, distinctions, differences is part of human life. This is the essence of Dvaita philosophy. Everything and everyone is different from everything else. The distinction or Bheda is the nature of everything in this world. Nothing can be similar or identical with anything else. This is the idea of Madhva. Now, and they ridicule Advaita. So here again you have to remember, Advaitins do not rule out or reject plurality or distinction or difference. What they say is, beyond these distinctions, beyond all these differences, there is a unifying thread of oneness and unity. That is, in all of us, there is one divine spark, Atman. That is same reality. There is nothing else. So, the point is, Advaitins don't say that everything is similar or identical to everything else. What they say is, there are differences, there are distinctions, but beyond all these differences and distinctions, there is one unifying thread. What is that? Same soul, the same Atman is present in everything. So, this oneness or unity of Dvaita is essentially a matter of one's own inner spiritual experience. Now, without understanding this, of course, it's beyond our scope and we don't have time. Dvaita literature is voluminous. There are hundreds of books written by Dvaitin scholars in modern times, also in English. In Sanskrit, there are dozens of great volumes. Jayatirtha, who wrote commentaries, then Vyasatirtha, who wrote the magnum opus, the greatest book belonging to post-Madhva period, that is called Nyayamrita. There are any number of books, Vaditirtha, Jayatirtha, Vyasatirtha, and so on. Now, in all these books you find a glaring absence of this fundamental understanding of the Advaitin's concept of oneness and unity. That means unity and oneness cannot even be conceived of at the physical level, at the empirical level. It is actually a matter of our own inner experience. Now, in order to contradict the Advaitin concept of unity and oneness, you can find there's a well-known verse in Madhva system, Jiveshwara Bhida Chaiva, Jadeshwara Bhida Tatha, Jiva Bhedo Midaschaiva, Jada Jiva Bhida Tatha, Midascha Jadabhedoyam, Prapanjo Bheda Panchakaha. So this world is Bheda Panchaka. The world consists of 5 distinctions and differences. Soyam Satyo Hyanadischa Sadhischet Nashamapnaya. Now, what are these 5 differences? One is the difference between God and different human beings, different souls, different jivas. God is on the one hand and all the jivas, they are two fundamentally different. God is, or Ishvara is Swatantra or independent and the absolute reality. All jivas are also real, but they are non-independent, they are dependent. That's the idea. Again, this world, the empirical world, that is also different from God. And again, among the jivas, among different living beings, there is a distinction. Each is different from everything else. There is no identity, no unity. And also there is a distinction between the objects of the empirical world, Jadapadarthas, and also jivas, individual souls. And again, within the empirical world, there is distinction, difference. Now remember, from one perspective, what Dvaitins say is absolutely true. What Madhvacharya says is absolutely correct. There is a distinction. There is a difference. Even in well-known books written on Tattvamasi Mahavakya, it's clearly admitted. But behind and beyond these differences, there is a level of spiritual oneness and unity, and it is something that is to be experienced. Advaita is not a philosophical concept, it is a matter of inner experience. So it is not about about unity at the physical level that Advaita is talking about, or the empirical level. There cannot be unity or oneness, there cannot be any kind of Advaita at the empirical level. It will be laughable if anyone talks about it. But the point is, beyond these differences, which are all true at the empirical level, there is a trans-empirical level. Beyond the empirical, there is a level of unity and oneness. And at that level, this Advaita oneness is experienced. This is the essence of Advaita. But this is not often recognized by Madhvacharya, because Madhva system primarily doesn't accept the distinction between the absolute reality and the relative. This is an important point to remember. And now again, another very important point, I mentioned earlier, Madhvacharya believes this world is real. And also he believes that, but it's fully admitted that one can get spiritual liberation only by God's grace. It's God's grace that enables us to get spiritual liberation. At the same time, you don't find in the Madhva system, though grace is invoked, there is not the kind of this dogmatic insistence on the total helplessness of the human being, because a human being is born into a state of inherent imperfection that you find in Augustinian theology. That you don't find in Madhva system. So Madhvacharya system is in a way, it is noted for a very peculiar concept that doesn't exist in any other Indian philosophical system, that is called the Nitya Naraka Siddhanta, the doctrine of eternal damnation. According to Madhva system, those who reject Vasudeva, Sriman Narayana, those who also reject this concept of God's grace, they are doomed to live permanently in a state of damnation, or it's called Nitya Naraka Siddhanta, the concept of eternal damnation. This is something very peculiar and very special to Madhva system. Now we are going to discuss, I already mentioned earlier, the epistemology of Madhvacharya. This is a very, very important thing. So Madhvacharya gives a very interesting name. This is a Sanskrit name. It is called Abhinava Anyatha Khyadi. Remember, Khyadivada is the Sanskrit equivalent for theory of error. In Vedanta, there is this concept of theory error. We suffer or we feel bondage, we don't make spiritual progress due to our own inherent ignorance, a mistake, an error that we commit in our interpretation of our own life. So the problem of error is actually a very important discussion here, which is called Khyadivadas. Now, what is Advaitin theory of error? I already mentioned, but I want to explain further. It is based on one important principle, that is Adhyasa, technically called is superimposition. Why this happens? There is no answer. The example is given, many examples. The well-known example is, you mistake mother of pearl for a silver, or maybe when you see a rope in a semi-dark room, you mistake it for a snake. Now, there is no real explanation. The explanation in Advaita is because of previous experience, which functions as a memory. So you have seen a snake somewhere in the forest or in the zoo, and its name, its form, its shape, its color, all registered in the memory system. So when you see an object in a semi-dark room lying on the floor, which apparently looks like a snake, you superimpose that snake idea on the piece of rope that you see in front of you. You do that because of memory. So Smriti Rupa, that is a simple description in Brahma Sutra Bhashya of Shankaracharya. Adhyasa is it takes the form of memory. It is a kind of memory that prompts us to believe that it is a snake and not a rope. Now in Madhva system, it is not just memory of previous experience. He says it's because our own inherent perception, wrong perception, our own vasanas, our own samskaras, our own karma phalas, means different activities, different karmas we have done in the past, as a result of which our mind gets polluted, and because we are not prayed, we have not taken refuge in Sriman Narayana, because of this error takes place. And the only way to get out of this is to take refuge in God, God's name. Then we get out of this. But in Advaita system, once we realize that it is not a snake but a rope, then we get liberation. Once we realize the relativity or the changing nature, the changeability, the transience, the impermanence, all worldly experiences, simultaneously we realize the transcendental reality, Brahman. At that time, we get liberated. This is Advaita system. But here one important point is there. God is not a necessary element in Advaitic liberation. It can be argued that way, because Advaita can also be expounded as a kind of pure spirituality, where you can, worshipping God and praying to God is very important, is very useful, but our liberation is just coming back to our own true nature. It is not a gift coming from a created God. So this is one important area of distinction between Advaita and all other systems of Vedanta, whether Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, Vallabha, Chaitanya, everywhere you find God playing a very important role as the giver of liberation, because of his kripa, because of his grace, because of his compassion. He gives liberation to his devotees. In Advaita, on the other hand, God is very much accepted. I mentioned many times that some of the most wonderful poetical classics of devotional poetry in Sanskrit are written by Shankaracharya himself. But again you find this liberation, this freedom, spiritual freedom, is our inherent nature. When we practice Nishkama Karma or Karma Yoga and attain mental purity, and when we realize that our true nature is beyond the body, mind and intellect, we are not just enjoyers of external worldly pleasures. We are beyond body, mind and intellect. There is one Atman. This realization can happen as a part of our own spiritual evolution. And we get this because it is already ours. You can go back to your home only when you have a home that you belong to or that belongs to you. Otherwise you cannot go back to your home. So liberation is our inherent nature. This is a very important principle to understand. In fact, one of the main reasons why Advaita became very popular in 20th century, after Swami Vivekananda's advent in the Western world, a number of teachers from India came to this country and taught some kind of Advaita. I don't claim that what everyone taught was Advaita, not at all. There are many totally non-Advaitic ideas that are floating around throughout 20th century. But those who read the works of the great sages like, after Swami Vivekananda's time, those who Ramana Maharshi, and now also there are some great teachers, Swami Chinmayananda, who was also in a way following the footsteps of Swami Vivekananda. You find the attraction to Advaita is based on the fact that Advaita takes us to our own spiritual home, our own true nature, which we somehow forgot or we misunderstood. And we don't know why and how we misunderstood. That's why we can never give an answer, a definite answer to the question, why did I mistake the rope for a snake? You may say because you have a memory, previous experience of seeing a real snake in the zoo and which is similar to the rope that's lying in the semi-dark room, you can say. But then why should that misunderstanding emerge? If somebody asks this question, there is no real answer. So, there is no real answer as to why this adhyasa happens. Smriti Rupa is because of memory, it's only part of the answer. But then the point is, we feel an urge for spiritual freedom to get out of the bondage and the tentacles. And when we read, as Paul Brendan read the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, suddenly he felt a attraction because there was it was not a call for going to a temple and pray to a god, no. Because there is something great about it. There are churches, there are other places of worship all over the world. But what Ramana Maharshi taught was, you get back to your own spiritual home. That's the real meaning of what he taught. You know, who are you? Who am I? Who am I is actually what is my true nature. Get back to my own spiritual home. And this was the essence of what Vivekananda himself preached in this country, Advaita. So, the point is, in Advaita, spiritual enlightenment is not something that comes to us from the external world as a result of some prayer or something. Prayer certainly is very helpful to eventually remove the obstacles that stands in the way of our realizing our true nature. Karma yoga is one method, prayer is another method, all kinds of spiritual activities also form different methods. But the main purpose is to get back to our own spiritual home. On the other hand, in non-Advaitic systems, and more dramatically in Madhva system, you are a servant and you are dependent upon God's grace, and He gives His grace, and you don't achieve anything through your own effort. You pray, and through His grace, you get this liberation. That's why Madhvacharya system has not become very popular among the free thinkers of Western world. Of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's system in either Hare Krishna or ISKCON, which claims lineage from Madhvacharya. Actually, there is a close link, a close intimate link between Madhva's teachings and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. Of course, there is a gap of more than 250 years. Chaitanya lived in 16th century and Madhvacharya in 13th century. So the difference is there. But still, the idea of our inner freedom, that we are actually free and we are not getting anything new when we get spiritual liberation, and in some ways that is close to Buddha's concept of nirvana. Of course, there is God idea is totally negated, but still, in a way it is closer, because nirvana is our true nature. When we realize the Four Noble Truths, then you practice this Ashtanga Marga, then you realize this truth. So you should be already liberated, otherwise you cannot get liberation. This may be a puzzle for those who listen for the first time. We can never get something that doesn't belong to us. Simple method in Advaita. You won't get anything unless it belongs to you. You may ask the question, if it belongs to you, then why should I try to get it? If it doesn't belong to you, you will not get it even if you strive your best. So we are already Atman. That is, the Semastomasi is a story of 10 people. They crossed the river and there was a confusion. And one fellow started counting. Finally, he couldn't see 10 people. Finally, because he forgot to count himself. Or you have a golden necklace and that you are tied on your neck, and you are searching for it everywhere. But then you didn't know it is already in your own neck. You are wearing it. Somebody else pointed out, see, it is actually hanging on your own neck. You are wearing that golden necklace. So all spiritual practices are only useful tools for us to understand, eventually realize that what we are searching is non-distinct and non-different from ourselves. That's the idea. And that's why, to understand Madhva system, you should compare it with Advaita, because both are polar opposites. To understand how white an object is, you should place it against the background of dark. The darkness can become manifest only when you place it against the background of white. Madhvacharya was a great saint, a great devotee, a great, very compassionate person. Absolutely, he was a very great saint. But as a philosophical system, there is this great distinction. The distinction is, in a way, in all non-Advaitic systems, somebody gives us as a gift and we get spiritual enlightenment. In Advaita, you go to temples, you do puja, you go to churches, you go to any place of worship, you live a good life. Even the purpose is eventually to realize the truth within ourselves. And that's because the truth is already there. The necklace is already hanging on our neck. Only we didn't know it was there, or whether we forgot that it was there. So that's why 4 important principles in Advaita. These are the cardinal principles. One is, Advaita is not a result of any activity. For example, the classical example, Advaita is not utpadyam. It is not the result of producing. It's not something that could be produced. So a pot maker producing a pot, it involves his activity. You should get up and you should use his tools, work hard, and the result is a pot. So like spiritual liberation is a pot because you made it. And Advaitins tell you that just because it is the result of your action, it is not real. Because if you produce something as a result of your actions, then it depends upon your action. It is the effect. Your actions constitute the cause. And whatever is the effect of a cause is non-existent before it was produced. And whatever is produced like that will one day disappear. So whatever comes into existence will cease to exist. This is an important principle. Many of the misunderstandings about Advaita, you can just imagine how I am going to quote from many books on Dvaita system. For example, how avidya is misunderstood, how paramarthika vyavaharika satta is misunderstood. For example, when Advaitins tell you that this world is not absolutely real, but not absolutely unreal. It is not absolutely unreal. We are living in this world. We cannot say, I am not sitting here. We cannot say, I am sitting here. But I won't be sitting here all the time. That is perfectly okay. That's what Advaita tells you. So, as a condition that remains the same throughout, in the past, present and future, is real. Anything that changes is not unreal, but not absolutely real. So the first point is, if spiritual liberation is the result of any activity, then that state of liberation cannot be real, it cannot be a permanent state. In that case, that it cannot be real, it cannot be liberation. That means mokshasya akaryatvat. Moksha, liberation, is not the effect of any activity. Again, Advaita is not like going from one place to another place. So it's not like, so it is not apya. Apya means growing from one place to another place, from bondage to liberation. Now, yesterday you were bound, you were bondage, you are suffering. Today you are liberated. If there was a condition in your life when you are essentially bound, and now you become liberated, then that liberation cannot be a permanent state of situation, because you may go back to the state of bondage again. So, liberation is not like coming from one state to another state, or from one village to another village. Grama, Gramantara Gamanam, it's called. Again, Advaita is not a result of change, any kind of change. Example is given, curd, yogurt. For example, yogurt was milk yesterday, today it has become yogurt, let's say. So it's kind of processing, refining, or something like that. And it cannot be samskarya. Oil seed can become oil. So the point is, liberation is our true nature. We are already in a state of liberation. The only problem is, we don't realize that. It is not a change of concept or idea. To become real, what happens? We should remove all the cobwebs from our brain. We think, this is my blood, this is my name. I am this physical body. I am this 5.6 inch long, 5.8 inch long human being, reading, writing, books, talking. This is all about me. These are all wrong trappings we have to get rid of. So all these activities are okay when we define ourselves as body-mind complex, as a body-mind complex. But our true nature is beyond all this. Even when this body-mind complex disappears after several years, I will be there all the time. That Atman, which is imperishable. And to realize this truth is liberation. Again, realizing this truth, the truth itself is there, but only we did not realize it. A realization means removing all wrong notions. Again, let's remember, every effort, every spiritual practice in Advaita is only an attempt to remove obstacles in front of us. One of the commentators of Yoga Sutra, writing commentary on the Kaivalya Pada, there is a sutra that is, it's about a farmer trying to irrigate his field. So, nimittam aprayojanam pragadinam kshetrikavad. Varana bhedastu kshetrikavad means, so nimittam aprayojanam. So, pragadinam varana bhedastu kshetrikavad. Means there's an imagery here. Kshetrika means a farmer. A farmer is irrigating his field and is trying to bring water from the nearby river, maybe a pond or lake. And what he does, he has to cut a canal for a mile-long canal, to bring water from the river to the field. So what he does is, he removes the obstacle that stand in between the river and the field, that doesn't allow the water to flow from the river to the field. What is the obstacle? That much of sand or soil or earth that he has to remove 1 mile long canal he has to cut. So he has to remove a lot of earth from the soil. So that is the obstacle. You remove the obstacle, the result is a canal and water flows. Similarly, all spiritual efforts are only attempts to remove the obstacles that stand in our way of returning to our own spiritual home, to our own spiritual identity. This is the glory of Advaita. Again, you have to remember, I have to emphasize again, Madhvacharya was a great thinker, very compassionate saint and sage. But as a spiritual philosophy, you have to keep in mind the glory of Advaita when we read these books. So, okay, thank you. Now I have given some kind of a synopsis plus an introduction to Madhva's epistemology. It is called Khyadivada, which is a very important subject. Epistemology, I want to follow the Western philosophical method to make it understand. Okay, okay. Thank you. Namaskar. Now you can ask questions. Most welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Very, very important context to show us this. Sri Ram, you're first with your hand.
Yeah. Sri Ram must do it.
Gopi, could you please review the concept of Ishvara in Dvaita?
In Advaita or Dvaita?
Yeah, Dvaita.
Advaita, okay. The concept of Ishvara is fully accepted in Advaita, no doubt about it. So, in fact, in the devotional writings of Shankaracharya, you find a trend. At the beginning, he gives a very elaborate description of God. Even Keshadipadam, all that you find from, the glorious figure of Divine Mother in Saudari Lagari, Ananda Lagari, and also Shiva and Shiva Parakshamatra. And then you find that divine reality is present in me. And to the end of most of his devotional poetical works, finally the poetical work concludes with the idea, well, I am in my, essentially as Atman, I am non-different from you. So Advaita fully accepts the idea of Ishvara. The idea of God with name and attributes, Saguna Sakara Ishvara. So as you go beyond this as part of your spiritual evolution, it is when God is not evolving as a result of your spiritual evolution, finally you find the same reality is within you. Remember, there is a very, I quoted this Madhvacharya's own system. See how Madhva's system ridicules Aham Brahmasmi. If you say Aham Brahmasmi, he says just like a king servant secretly claiming to his guest, I am the real king. And the king comes and hits him, beats him. So, Ghadayanti Rajanaha means the kings will kill the servant who claims that he is the real king. So the point is, this is real Advaitic experience. So that is compared to a king servant claiming to be king in the absence of the latter. You can just imagine how absolutely ridiculous. It's like that, Advaita doesn't reject the God idea. It goes beyond that. Second point is, in real spiritual life, all the great Advaitins were going to the temples every day morning, were doing all rituals, puja, everything. Then only they will start writing on these dialectical works. Remember.
What is the technical definition of Ishvara in Dvaita?
Ishida, the one who controls, the one who regulates, the one who governs. Ishita, Ishvara, Ishdhadu. Means the one who controls, governs, regulates. That's the real meaning of Ishvara. That is there in all traditions. But remember, in Advaita tradition, technically, Ishvara is the reflection of Brahman in the Samashti Upadhi. Jiva is the reflection of Brahman in the Vyashti Upadhi. So, when Brahman reflects in the cosmic reflecting medium, it is Ishvara. But the same Brahman reflects in the individual reflecting medium, Antakarana, Mana, Buddhi, etc. Then it is Jiva. But remember, you remove this reflecting media, then it is the same reality. So, the sun that is reflecting in a huge ocean surface, and the sun that reflects in a tiny well, the same sun. But let's say if all the water disappears from the ocean, if the water gets dried up from the well, then this only one sun remains. Only thing. The well is like the antakarana of an individual jiva. The ocean is like the reflective medium for the cosmic reality. So if all the water from the ocean disappears, what happens? The sun reflecting in the ocean surface, it goes back to the real sun. And also the sun that is reflecting on the in the well, if the water gets dried up, that sun goes back to the real sun. There is no difference. So depending upon the reflecting medium, there is an expression. That is true for every human being, every living being in this world. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Maharaj, the next reflected hand up is Sanjay.
Yeah.
Namaste, Maharaj.
Namaste, namaste.
My question is along the same lines, which I had even before Shriram raised the hand. So my question is, what is the reason why Shankaracharya wrote all those devotional poems?
Yeah.
I'll give you a little bit of my confusion.
Yeah. Okay.
I totally align with the Advaitic philosophy of the same consciousness existing.
Yeah.
However, but if you look at the rope concept or even the klesha or samskara concept of Yoga Sutras, now for me, the devotional poems from Shankaracharya has had an impact in kind of removing the dust on the mirror, as you call it. So why did Shankaracharya write all of this?
I can give an example. You see, I tell you. You have watched our Ulima Memorial Day. One of our devotees actually recited that Guru Paduka Stotram. You see what happened, there was total silence. I found our distinguished invited professor was sitting there with eyes closed completely in contemplation. He was sitting close to me. An aged man of 87 years, belonging to a non-Hindu, non-Indian background, he could feel the divinity somewhere within him. But so you can imagine. So see the magic of sacred words, the music, the symphony of sacred words of Shankaracharya. I found this, I was watching in the audience. I don't want to mention anybody's name. Our distinguished aged speaker who was sitting there, who may not have read any, I don't know, but he belongs to a non-Hindu, non-Indian background, but deeply well-versed in the scriptures and the strong spiritual sensitivity that helped him to connect with the pure spirituality wherever it is found. He was sitting there deeply immersed. And I also saw the same thing happening around there. What was the reason for it? That is Shankaracharya's Stotra. So you find a great piece of poem which extols a deity, a personal deity, is as Advaitic as the most profound Advaitic philosophical work at two different levels. It connects with the human mind, not only philosophy, but in a way, Shankaracharya he started a university, he started a city college, he started a primary school, he also started a kindergarten. So you can find A professor teaching the university can also enjoy children playing in the kindergarten. So anyone who is attracted towards the highest Advaita philosophy will have a strong sensitivity to connect with the music, the spiritual music of his poetical work. So that's something very interesting. I have not come across, to be very frank with you, as a student of Sanskrit in a very traditional sense, I don't think there's anything in Sanskrit language which could be compared to some of Shankaracharya's poetical works. I remember he's not known for his poetical works, he's known for his philosophical classics. It's something like, suppose you are a great inventor, you are an Einstein. Suppose nobody knows you as a scientist, but he knows you only for wood cutting may be your hobby. Every day on Friday and Sundays, you may spend half an hour cutting wood, and somebody calling you, you are a great woodcutter, which you don't do as your main activity. You are a scientist. Suppose Einstein comes to be known as a woodcutter if he has woodcutting as a hobby. That is what Shankaracharya as a poet. Poetry was not his main contribution. But if you are a philosopher with a spiritual sensitivity, your mind immediately gets tuned into the magic of his devotional poems. There are many. See, there are other great devotional poets. Can you name anything written by Ramanuja, Madhva, Chaitanya, Vallabha that can be compared to the devotional poetry of Shankaracharya in devotional fervor? And here in Advaita, remember. So, that means at some level you find the mind automatically becomes sensitive to anything that is spiritual. And music, after all, poetry in its highest sense is music. Poetry in the highest sense, it is music. So you can find the mind automatically connects with the spiritual dimension of music. That's what you find in Shankaracharya. It's clear? Okay, thank you.
Maharaj.
Thank you.
Maharaj, on that point before next question,
Yeah.
I had asked you years ago about Shankaracharya's use of poetry and prose in alternation as one of the ways that he composed the treatises. Some of them will shift within the same work between what one might think of as poetical prose and poetry. And there's something inherently philosophical about the poetry itself combined with the prose. So I never thought that they were that separate in the way, the really amazing way that he combined them in that technique. And at that time you explained to me that it was, this overarching inherent philosophy behind how he would use both poetry and prose.
Yeah. No, you are right, absolutely. His prose style is called prasanna gambhira. So there are two terms used here. It's an adjective. Gambhira means grand, great, sublime. Prasanna means soothing, healing, soft. Something that's smiling at you, that is prasanna. So you can find in his prose, in Sanskrit prose, the attributes of sublime poetry and also the grandeur of sublime prose. That's how he composed his books. I tell you, I don't think, Swami Vivekananda also mentioned this, I don't think anybody in Sanskrit language approached even close to him, anywhere near him in accomplishing this. Something interesting is going on in India. You find there are so many organizations and institutions have come up, surprisingly in the 21st century, IT age, and even IT professionals are trying to promote the original Advaita works of Shankaracharya. And even in America, you find people chanting many of these sublime poets. So I tell you, poetry, as I mentioned, is pure poetry, is pure music. And music, for true music, uh, language is only incidental. But highest music, and also for the highest poetry, language is only incidental, secondary. Because it has its own dimension, its own way of connecting with the human mind. You need not be a great fan of a great poet, or may not be connoisseur of music to really appreciate great music. I mean, great music I'm talking about. So that's what you find in Shankaracharya's poetical classics. So I cannot give a better answer than by referring to what happened a few days ago when some devotees chanted Guru Padaka Stotram, and the effect on people who may not have, I don't think even 1% of the audience understood the meaning of what they were listening to. Maybe less than 1%. But there's no doubt about its impact on everyone.
Yes, Maharaj. It's
Yeah,
true. I
yeah.
witnessed that also.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the thing. That is so the magic of it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. Mark, thank you for your patience. You're
Yeah,
next.
thank you, thank you.
Good evening, Maharaj.
Yeah,
This is a bit of an unusual question. It's more of a spiritual question about sadhana.
Yeah.
It has to do with a quote by one of our Vedantan Swamis. When I was at the Shanti Ashram
yeah,
in May, I guess, no, in April, at that time there was a booth that had a lot of displays about the history of Shanti Ashrama,
yeah,
and it also had pamphlets.
yeah,
And one of the pamphlets was entitled "Selected Teachings of Swami Trigunanatha," given in
Trigunathidananda.
California.
Trigunath,
Given in California.
yeah,
So the first one stopped me right in my tracks, and I'm still processing it and trying to understand it. And I was wondering if I can read it to you and get your comment on it.
oh, you want
It
to read?
says the mind
Mind.
the mind which is attached to more than one thing can never reach the goal. Now, by one thing, does he mean one spiritual teacher, one spiritual path, one job, one wife? What exactly does he mean?
Oh yeah, see, I tell you, it means that in spiritual life, at the beginning stage, one should have this focus, single-mindedness to one's own chosen path. But if when you become fully focused on that, then you won't feel any problem when you also focus on similar, equally great other objects. Because it is a, remember the example, what we can explain in words is very only small little part of the reality. A spiritual seeker will certainly need to be focused on a single method of spiritual sadhana. Not reading, he should read only one book, you go to one temple, not at all, not in that sense. But you should have single-minded, the single-mindedness is what is emphasized here, single-mindedness, concentration, single-mindedness on his own or her own chosen spiritual path. For example, if you are a Vedantin, there is no problem, there is no harm in trying to understand mindfulness, trying to understand other traditions, but you should have single-minded devotion to your own chosen path. Being rooted there, you can certainly read other books. It doesn't mean that you should not read anything else, you should reject everything else, not at all. Absolutely no. So the single-mindedness of the mind to one's own chosen path during the early part of one's spiritual evolution, that's what is emphasized here.
And that's how you reach the goal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, David. Good to see you. Thanks. You're next.
Hello, Swami.
Yeah.
I had just a comment, and then I have my question.
Yeah.
The two things. Einstein loved to play the violin. The other thing is, I remember lectures with Swami Seshananda, and he would go in one lecture for an hour and a half. He would go from pure Dvaita to extreme devotion to Holy Mother,
Yeah.
back and forth throughout the, you could just see it in one lecture many times. He
Yeah.
would go
Yeah.
extreme Dvaita, talking about Gaudapada, and then the next minute about Holy Mother. So it was interesting that
I read about it, and I heard also from devotees like you. Other devotees also told me the same thing when I visited Portland. Yeah.
Yes, it was interesting. It was sometimes hard to follow because you would go from one extreme to the other.
That's true. That's true. For him, it was not turning from Advaita into something else. For him, talking about mother was not different from talking about Advaita. For the mother ideal, mother's teachings was as real to him. Advaita also equally real to him. So when you reach that point, the conflict that we feel when we listen to them, they don't feel. So you can imagine Shankaracharya was writing all this. This man was traveling, walking all over Indian subcontinent and writing all these grand books, philosophical work, classics. And then when he reached a temple, he would recite a great devotional poems his disciples wrote down. He recited verbatim. He didn't feel any conflict. So after some time, you don't feel any conflict, actually. We stop putting things in different boxes, different compartments. At some point, and that's the genius of Advaita. The moment you turn to Madhvacharya, immediately you have to, you should not do that, you should not do this. You can find. You should have the particular symbol on your face, exact that the symbol, you have to put it that way, all that. But here, one Advaitin, an Avadhuta practicing Advaita came to the Dakshineshwar. And this man, he didn't know when he was going to take a bath, when he was going to take his meal. He was one with nature, one with the cosmos, one with the world. He was feeling total identity with everything in this world, including the dogs with whom he was sharing the food. You kind of, Guru Maharaj Gospel you find. So for him, there was no distinction between sitting as an honored guest in the dining room and sharing the food from the stray dogs. That's the exalted state of spiritual consciousness. And Sri Ramakrishna prayed to Mother, don't make me like that, He was a bit terrified. Maybe his own experience, level was that. But he had something else to do. He had to teach young disciples. So he didn't want to remain in that condition. But the first question you raised, I somehow forgot. The first question?
Well, I had that was just a comment on remarking on the other person's question. But I had a question and I said that Einstein also played violin. He loved to play violin to relax.
True. I was just giving an example. So to call Shankaracharya as a poet, in a way, is like calling Einstein as a great violinist. I can put language, I can change it. Because violin, he is not known for his skill with the violin. He is known for something else. But he must have been very good in playing with the violin. That's not what he is well known for. So like that, you don't hear much about Shankaracharya as a poet. But those who know, they know. And in fact, he is rated by some great literary critics. He is rated as a far greater poet than even Kalidasa. Kalidasa is India's Shakespeare, put in that way. He wrote both poetical works and also plays. Okay.
But Swami, I had a question though. With Madhava, how is it possible that somebody as intelligent as Madhava would, with the Mandukya Upanishad, how in the world could one misinterpret that as being a bhakti devotional Upanishad? So with did he just ignore the Mandukya Upanishad?
Even Mandukya Upanishad also contains many ideas which are devotional, even in Shankaracharya book. I think the main problem is he found himself in a time warp, imprisoned within a time warp, a prisoned within a set of circumstances conditioned by his own times, when he himself had to study this Ishtasiddhi under his teacher, when the interpretation must have gone a bit too dialectical to the point of negating the world and negating the very concept of praying or devotion as a revolt against this. Instead of maybe turning to better teachers, reading it better, reading more about Dvaita, he turned as a kind of hostile opponent of Advaita. This is very interesting, and what surprises me as a student of both the systems of philosophy is how he could miss the real implication of some of the central tenets of Advaita, and how he could so totally, completely misunderstand it. That dilemma occurs only when I read Ramanuja's works. How could those very intelligent, brilliant people could so completely misunderstand Advaita? Which a man like Paul Brandon could understand. He was living somewhere in New York in the beginning, the early decades of 20th century, and went straight to Ramana Maharshi that Advaita is enough for him, for his life. Because there is no trappings, no conditions, just like a highway, an open door, anyone can enter. You are not asked to give your identity, to sign a paper. Only thing is, you want to get back to your own spiritual home, that is Advaita. You don't have to follow this way, that way, not that, but this. No, that because they were already familiar with the trappings of traditional Christianity. So all these ideas, God who emphasizes certain very strong point which should accept, and if you don't accept, you have consequences. Enough of that. So they didn't bother much about it. And here's Ramana Maharshi was sitting there, you can see his picture. Absolutely no trappings, no prison, nothing. He was totally free. And there he went, and it was enough for him. So that's a special attraction of Advaita for many people all over the world who have this single-minded sense of search for the truth. That's the idea behind it. I have to tell you that in modern times, this conflict doesn't exist. This was only in those days. So intellectual warfare, dialectical warfare between Dvaitins and Advaitins. It has no relevance in modern times. Because I just want to give a peep into those wonderful, glorious days when great philosophers wrote for and against different systems. That's all. Yeah. So Thank you. We will continue in the next session. Thank you.
Sriram, so you'll wait till next time if that's okay.
Sriram, could you wait till next week? Please remember your question. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You want to comment? Okay, please.
By the definition of Advaita, paths of Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Raja Yoga only lead to Chitta Shuddhi. Unless they culminate in a reflection on Atma-Vichara, they're incomplete. So,
these 4 yogas are very helpful in elevating your mind to a state where Atma-Vichara or contemplating Atman becomes easy. There are different tools, different means to prepare your mind for that higher state. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Maharaj, let's hope philosophical dispute comes back into fashion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your wonderful questions. And okay. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Swami Vedananda ji closely listening to me, he himself told me what drew him to Vedanta society was Advaita 60 years ago, remember. more than maybe 65 years ago. Just imagine. So
Who was
Advaita.
that, Swami?
Eh?
Swami Vedanta, how wonderful.
No, there are many like that. Many of our distinguished professors who came as a speaker. Many, there are innumerable people. So, and they continue to practice their own different religious traditions into their born. Still, they can identify with Advaita. That is the universality of Advaita. Thank you.